We are live on YouTube, apparently, a couple of minutes early. So
Okay, I will be
there we
sure
go.
to behave.
The thing is that you'd think these people designing these apps would have big red buttons that are like go live. No,
Hmm.
it's the save button when you enter the credentials from Zoom to YouTube. Apparently that save button is enough to put you live. So hello YouTube. I may as well start the Zoom side as well. There we go. Welcome everybody. We're a couple of minutes early. I am joined today by Lee. Welcome back, Lee.
Good to be back.
Where have you been? What have you been up to?
So the back half of the year in solutions engineering land is conference season. So went to KubeCon in Salt Lake City, and then I went to AWS reInvent. We obviously have Thanksgiving here in the US, and then right after that is AWS reInvent, which is a very hectic time of the year for us in solutions engineering. And then I went to a work organized event, customer meeting event in London, which was good to be home. And then before you know it, it's the end of the year. And yeah, and then we have our end of quarter in January. So we're really focused on deals and making sure that those customers that are choosing to purchase Tailscale are happy. And now we're into a little quiet period in February, which is great because it means I get to be back here.
Yeah, that's usually most people's January is the quiet bit. So what were the highlights from the big conferences like KubeCon and reInvent for you?
reInvent is really just one of the best things to do if you have any sort of extroversion and enjoy talking to customers because you get this opportunity to hear, you just get this parade of technical people coming through your booth who are talking either about the problems they want to solve or the problems they've already solved with Tailscale. And that's really exciting. It's a really awesome. I will say 5 days in Las Vegas is more than enough Vegas for anybody.
Yeah.
And then KubeCon obviously is very similar, but with a Kubernetes focus. And as the owner of the Kubernetes space on the solutions engineering team, I get to have lots of great conversations about what problems customers have solved with Tailscale and what aspirational problems they want to solve with Tailscale, which I think, we just released the client metrics, which you did an awesome video about. And a lot of people wanted to hear about how they could get more visibility into how Tailscale works and like how many packets are being sent. And so we just shipped that client metrics feature. So I had lots of great conversations around that as well.
All right. So a little bit of how the format's going to work today, folks. Those of you that are already here, there are two live chats for you. There are some people over on Zoom. Hello, if that's you. And there are some people over on YouTube. Hello, if that's you. I've got you on each monitor either side of the camera. So feel free to put questions into the live chat in both places. We will pick them up and do our best to answer them throughout the well, it's afternoon for me, the morning for you, and keep it civil, all that kind of stuff. Polite, what have you. We're all here to have a good time. So Lee and I will do our best to answer all of your questions about Tailscale, and you can get as deep as you want. And even if we don't know the answers, we will go away and find somebody that does after the stream. So feel free to drop your questions in the live chat and anything you want to add, Lee?
No, I think that's with a well-worn format that works well. So let's get right to it. We do need questions from you to answer, otherwise it'll just be Alex and I talking in our imitable British accents. So hopefully people have questions ready to ask.
We've got some on the YouTube side already, so let's get cracking.
Excellent.
Mark writes, is it possible to use VIA in grants to route certain nodes or domains out via Mulvad or exit nodes, or is this only possible with plain Tailscale exit nodes?
It's currently only possible with Tailscale exit nodes because the source and destination that you have in the grant is only aware of like your Tailscale network. Movad is a part of your tailnet. We like peer it into all your tailnet, but we can't actually do that. I would love to hear the use case for this. I am
Yeah.
assuming it's probably something related to specific websites or something along those lines, it's worth remembering that that's what app connectors can do. So if you want to route specific websites through a specific telnet node, then an app connector will do that. That said, you can't use app connectors with Mulvad yet either. So yeah, I would love to hear a little bit more about what the desired end state is there.
Yeah, the important detail, as you picked up on, Lee, is that this chap Mark wants to put it through Mulvad, which is a
Hmm.
privacy VPN. You can use VIA with grants if you want to, as again Lee said, route it out through a specific app connector type node. And if you're not familiar with an app connector, you can think of it a little bit like split DNS for a specific subdomain. So let's say, for example, you've got you want to route all of your traffic to GitHub through a certain piece of infrastructure. That's what you'd use an app connector for.
Yeah, it's really great if you want to have the functionality that you get with an exit node for specific websites, but you don't want to accidentally route all of your YouTube traffic through a very high bandwidth expensive destination. So like it gives you the best of both worlds.
And Mr. Benito 202 writes in with not a question, just a bit of feedback, really. Thanks for a great product. Love it.
You're welcome, I guess. We love working on it. So yeah.
All right, so Bossman writes in, I wanted to ask if it was possible for me to share a user machine and for them to use Tailscale SSH to log in with their Google account, for example. So I think the question is about node sharing and Tailscale SSH specifically.
I'm gonna pass over to you. I've done not a lot of node
Uh-oh.
sharing stuff. So do you, I mean, I don't actually know the answer to that question. So
Well, wait, why don't we find out in real time? Is that all right? Can we try that?
yeah, let's go. Let's do it.
Let me figure out how to share a screen with this thing. Here we go. Share this window. Boom. Oh, Zoom, I need to do the macOS permissions thing on can you see that? Is that on
I
Zoom
can see
yet?
that. Yep. Yeah, I can
Oh,
see it.
great.
Yep.
Okay. Cool. Right. So I'm going to get logged into my Tailnet over here and
So
I'm
we're
going to
seeing
share.
a grants page. I don't know if that's the intent.
Oh, well, it's not the intent. That's the wrong window.
Wrong window.
Yeah. I want to share.
I've just noticed you're a side taskbar person, Alex. You know, I feel like there's two types of person, a side and a bottom taskbar person.
Yeah, side. Yep, definitely side. Uh, how do I pick which window? This isn't going well, is it? Share. Has that changed? I can't see what I'm sharing. This is such a poor experience. I'm sorry, everybody. Oh, here we go. Here we go. All right. What's weird is I picked a specific window and then it shared a different desktop instead. But there we go. All right. We should see my tailnet now. A tailnetscales at gmail.com. So what I'm going to do is that node's turned off. Oh, yes. Connected jellyfin. Where is that running? Baldrick, that's my laptop. What I wanted to do was create a. I want to share a node with Lee in real time and just see if that's going to work on Tailscale SSH. So let me change context here. I'm having to because I turned my demo cluster off for the weekend and didn't turn it back on again. All right, we will get there. We will get there, people. Right, this is my personal tailnet. So what could possibly go wrong? Okay, here we go. And a Proxmox cluster. Here we go. Okay, so I have a node here called Yeet. I don't know. We can use this one, I think. Gonna get logged in, and that's the wrong password. There you go, you try to do too much at once, huh? Tailscale status. Let's just do it on this node here. Tailscale set dash dash SSH to make sure that's turned on. I'm going to share this node with you of deep thought, Lee, and then you're going to tell me whether you can SSH to it or not, and then that will be where do I? Oh, I should probably take that off the screen. Oh, it'll be fine. What could go wrong?
What could go wrong?
As long as you're quick, we'll be fine. I sent that to you on
Uh,
Slack.
uh, Grabbing it.
This makes it more exciting for us at least, huh?
This is what I'm here for. I want realness. You know what I mean? Like this is what I'm here for.
Well, this is
Okay,
as
I
real as
accepted the invite. Okay, I see deep thought in my tailnet right now.
fantastic. Okay, so can you SSH to Deep
Let
Thought?
me make sure. So Tailscale ping. I can hit that. What is the login? Well, have you got an SSH?
Well, you
Um,
can tell me whether you could just do SSH root at Deep Thought and it will allow the traffic or not. Actually, that's a good point.
Permission denied Tailscale. So I'm assuming that means the ACL needs to be configured to allow me access.
All right, so there is an ACL group, isn't there, of users,
So yeah, you would probably
shared
have an
shared
SSH
users.
block. Yeah, right here.
Yep.
Um, so I think if you added a specific source of like if you added me to line 40 as like mail at lbrlabs.com. There
Like
we
this.
go. Yep.
There is an auto group shared too, isn't there? So I'm going to give that a go. See if that does the trick. Again, this is not scripted. Perhaps you can tell on the live stream. Ah, okay.
So that would be the source though, wouldn't it? Wouldn't like the auto group shared. Okay.
Oh yeah, fair
Moment of
point.
truth. I'm in.
Oh, there you go. So there you go. You can indeed share a node using Tailscale node sharing, and that's how easy and quick it is.
We figured it out in 5 minutes. I'm definitely not going to RM minus RF this machine, so I've just logged out of that, and you can remove my access if you want,
Yeah,
Alex, to
thanks,
your
Lee.
to your personal infrastructure.
Next time
Where's
I'm
that
going to
Bitcoin
power up.
miner that I had?
Well, there is a GPU in that box, so you could have, maybe I don't know, done a little bit of Olama shenanigans or something. Who knows? But anyway, there you go. That's a little bit about node sharing. So just to recap what we did, I shared a node running in my basement with Lee, who's in Seattle today.
Oh,
And
yeah, Pacific Northwest, but yeah.
yeah, you could see that it was just a case of sending him a link and he was able to SSH into that remote node. No firewall configurations, no weirdness, just, Tailscale magic working its magic. So there you go, boss man. That was my heart rate's going to recover shortly. Okay.
This
Um,
realness is what we're here for, though, Alex, right? Like, let's just figure it out together as a team. That's the way to
Yes,
do it.
indeed. Yeah. Malik spotted one of the nodes in my cluster is called Guilfoyle. Yes. Actually, my backup node is called Anton, again, in further honor of Silicon Valley. So there you go. Okay, cool. That is an answer for you on node sharing and SSH. Jose writes, is there any more information available on Taildrive? I've been using it for a while and I'd love to be able to add files to the shared Taildrive folder from my phone.
I don't. We're in the part of the domain that I use the least here, which is the
Yeah,
tail drive. I don't actually know what the plans are around tail drive like functionality going forward. My understanding is that there's probably a limited amount that we can do with phone drive sharing simply because of the sandbox that you get on those phones, right?
likely, yeah.
Whereas you have Tailscale on your laptop and there's directories and there's a file system and all that kind of stuff, there's a really limited set of capabilities on phone usage. Now, our iOS and Android engineers have consistently pulled rabbits out of hats when it comes to the functionality. But as somebody who's not a mobile dev, I'm not going to make any promises around that. But I think that's probably where the limitation lies around a lack of a true file system to be able to share from there.
So I'm just going to read straight from the documentation. I know that's a bit of a cop out, but it says sharing folders from iOS is not supported. Sharing folders from Android is not supported. However, you can share from Synology, from Linux, from Windows, and macOS as well. So what Taildrive does under the hood is it creates a WebDAV server. And again, I think this is probably likely due to the sandboxing that Lee referenced on mobile devices for battery reasons. They're not going to let you run long running services in the background, particularly on iOS. So Taildrive essentially lets you share folders from a server side or a desktop or a NAS type situation to other devices. That's really the use case that we built it for. Caveat is that Taildrive is still currently in alpha. So here be dragons. It's one of the least tested features. I don't want to say least tested, but like it's new and there may be some rough edges. And if you find them, please let us know. All right, so Zoom people, we need some questions from you. So far, we've not had any. So if you're over there, Malik, I'm looking in your direction. Ask us a question, please, bud. Okay, Marcos writes, "Hey guys, awesome product. Quick question: can I connect two networks and access hosts between those networks using the original host IP addresses? In other words, no use of NAT in the Tailscale client or node itself."
You can do it without NAT, but you can create subnet routers on both sides that will allow you to use the original address. So you still need to put Tailscale inside the network, right? So you have network A, network B. Let's just say for the sake of illusion that we've got two cloud VPCs that we're trying to access. And you want to be able to access compute hosts in those cloud VPCs via its original IP address. If you add subnet routers to both sides, then it advertises that address range to every client in the Tailscale network. And you can access those things directly via the IP addresses that are being advertised to the network. The reason that you can't do this with NAT is because most IPv4 networks will have some form of NAT in them, unless you are one of the lucky people that is um, only doing IPv6 everywhere, which is very, very unlikely. The thing to really bear in mind around subnet routing that I always like to bring up with customers and people using Tailscale is that once you use subnet routers, you like have limited ability to ACL things past that subnet router. So you can say, Alex is able to reach, limit his access to the subnet router. But once you've reached that subnet router, the subnet router will just forward the packet on. So we always try and recommend, where possible, installing Tailscale directly on the devices because then you can tag them and you can be very prescriptive in who is allowed to access what behind that subnet router.
And also, everything that is a Tailscale direct device to device connection is encrypted end to end too. There's no telling what happens once it leaves a subnet router on your network. So again, that really speaks to your threat profile and how paranoid you are, how many hats you have made of tin lying around. But yeah, it's a good point that the once the traffic hits the subnet router, kind of Tailscale's job is done, and it's up to you to secure the rest. So
Yeah.
great question. Okay, so Rick Kwok writes in, "I've been using OpenSense, or I've been working on OpenSense for a site-to-site solution for months, I assume with a VPN. Is Tailscale ready for OpenSense site-to-site connections at the moment or not?"
Yeah, I mean, one of the things that's unique about OpenSense is that it has it's a BSD based operating system. And at the moment, our Tailscale client does not support disabling source NAT of IP addresses on OpenBSD. That's Linux only at this time. So that may or may not affect your ability to create a true site-to-site VPN. You can kind of get by with site-to-site and OpenSense if you don't care about SNATing like the IP addresses, but there are gremlins there. So I think, as I've said this, the short answer is probably not quite for OpenSense specifically. There are open issues and open feature requests in our Git around SNAT subnet routes, but there are operating system limitations on FreeBSD for that. You can sort of do it if you fancy manipulating IP tables rules yourself. You can like add masquerade rules and all that kind of stuff. It is possible, but my tolerance for do it yourself nowadays is a lot lower than it used to be. So I don't think I would do it.
And we have Tailscale to thank for some of that, to be honest with you. Like in the old days, we were rolling WireGuard keys ourselves and copying configs around, and now I'm used to connecting to anything anywhere with a couple of clicks. What I would say is that I have used Tailscale for at least a couple of years now as a site-to-site VPN, kind of. Like I can access infrastructure I've got running in England at my mum's house as if I'm sat in that building from this chair right now if I wanted to. It's not really where Tailscale shines the best. There might be better solutions for you for a pure site-to-site VPN, like tunnel. And then, of course, you can just route the traffic that way if you want to. But not to say it won't work. It's just to say that, It's not what necessarily the tool was designed for as its primary use case. Okay, Malik wrote in on Zoom side. Hooray! Thanks, Malik. As a Tailscale user who signed up with GitHub, we can't currently use pass keys to log in. Is there any hope for that in the future? I know I could sign up with another SSO login, but I'd rather not abandon my beloved 3-year-old Tailscale account.
Do you know this one? I want to take it, or I can monopolize the time.
I don't.
So currently, as it stands, the passkeys are only enabled on certain tailnets and certain SSO providers. This is really just an engineering time problem rather than like a functional lack of ability. Um, I think Malik, the best like you can change your SSO provider with a support ticket. So if you really want to use passkeys and you want to switch from GitHub, just send a support ticket to the new identity provider. You can keep your tailnet. You don't have to abandon it. But right now there is no ability for the GitHub signups. GitHub signups are really unique for us because they don't have things like an email address that comes with that identity provider. So we're just getting the identity of like your GitHub profile, and we don't see things like your email address and all that kind of stuff because we want to limit the amount of information that we get from the identity providers for obvious privacy reasons. So we only see your like GitHub username in the OIDC exchange, and that's one of the limitations. But it is possible from an engineering perspective, but it just hasn't been prioritized. My recommendation really is to yeah, open a support ticket and we can switch you over to a different identity provider and you can keep all of your beloved devices and your beloved Tailscale account.
Yeah, pass keys are pretty awesome, but they do have some limitations. So Jonathan Doyle writes in on the YouTube side. This is a really juicy question. Tailscale requires the cloud to manage the connection between the nodes, right? If so, how are you planning on funding that cloud service when Tailscale is mostly free?
Tailscale is mostly free to personal users like the people we are seeing here. However, we have an army or a large number of users that use Tailscale's enterprise and premium features for their organization. And this is an intentional decision that we've made, right? We want you to love Tailscale so much that you then go to work and you use another VPN and you say, oh man, it's so much easier using Tailscale than insert VPN here. We have a very sustainable, and my job as the leader of the solutions engineering team is helping organizations adopt Tailscale. And we have seen organizations that are small, 10-person startups, all the way to 1,000, 5,000 user organizations. They are our business model, right? Like our business model is those enterprise organizations. And, our personal users that love Tailscale for their home access are designed to just really enjoy the product and to advocate for it at work. If you love Tailscale and you want to see it stick around, go to your IT team and say, hey, you know that VPN that I never want to use and I keep turning it off because it's always broken? Why don't we replace that with Tailscale? And I will personally help you do that because that's my job on the solutions engineering team. And we see this a lot. So I wouldn't be worried about our hosting environment. Our engineering team is very considerate about things like derp servers and all that kind of stuff around like bandwidth, and we move them around and add new ones on a regular basis. But we are really dedicated to making sure that home users are happy and enterprise users are happy too.
So what's a derp server and how does that factor into Tailscale's business model?
Yeah, it's a really good question. So derp servers are what we use for our discovery. So it acts as a stun server. So when Tailscale starts up, it sends a bunch of information to the derp server that says, "Here's where I am in the world." A very established technology that you use for things like your PlayStation or your Xbox connectivity when you're connecting with game servers. But in the event that we can't create direct connections, we also pass traffic through those derp servers, and that is bandwidth intensive. And as anybody who has done any cloud engineering in the past will know, bandwidth is expensive. No matter where you get it from, bandwidth is going to cost you money. Now, there are other hosting providers that are very bandwidth bandwidth sensitive. No names will be thrown around. Large enterprise organizations, but we are very considerate in what we choose for our derp servers to make sure that we have the ability to provide a good experience across every tailnet.
And that's one of the reasons we harp on so much about direct device to device connections, is because the reality is, I don't have an exact figure, but it's got to be the high 90% worth of traffic. Doesn't even touch Tailscale's infrastructure, barring things like the initial key exchange and the stun discovery stuff that Lee mentioned earlier. Most traffic, and I want to get a figure on this now, like high 90% figure worth of our traffic never touches any Tailscale infrastructure. So hopefully that answers the question. It really is it's a unique business model, I think, in terms of appealing, because Tailscale was written by developers for developers at the beginning, but we've slowly moved more into the enterprise market as we have realized that people want to see Tailscale stick around, and we've got to make some money at the end of the day. So there's lots of things you can do, spreading the word about Tailscale wherever you see it, taking it to work. There's a link in the chat, by the way, tailscale.com/BTW for bring to work. And that's really the best thing you can do to support us and, keep a roof over our heads, so to speak. So
You can also, there is also, we add, with popular demand, we added the personal plus tier with people who just really wanted to give us money because they value the product. And, I think we resisted it for quite a while, but so many people asked for it. If you really do value what you get out of Tailscale, the personal plus tier is a great way to do that. I will say, like, there are a lot of, there are a lot of SaaS companies and SaaS startups who aspire to what we call a product-led growth model, which is basically the product does the talking for you. And Tailscale has really epitomized that by, in my opinion, building a product that people are so happy to use that they take it to work and say, or they go to work and say, you know what, I would rather use this than whatever other certificate-based VPN you're currently using. And we have an entire team of people. I know that engineers generally don't want to talk to salespeople, but our sales team has been built with that in mind, right? Like we're here to help you adopt Tailscale, not to push things that you don't need.
And we just crossed 10,000 paying customers. It was 5,000 at some point last year, and then very recently it was 10,000. And, we're starting to see that hockey stick. So all good, I think. And hopefully that covers off the question. And you can trust Tailscale to be here for a long time. We are also planning some content around how you can trust the Tailscale connections itself. So like how some of the mechanics work with regards to like the WireGuard key exchange under the hood and the discovery that Lee mentioned, all that kind of stuff. So keep your eyes peeled to the YouTube channel, and that stuff will be coming soon, TM. I'm going to butcher this name. I am incredibly sorry, but I think it's Herne Pavlich. Sorry. Hi, Alex. I would love an update on how to leverage TSD proxy and share it with accounts outside of my tailnet. So you're referring to TSD proxy, which is something I did a video on a few weeks ago, which essentially acts like a reverse proxy for your tailnet. It's a community-based project. And pretty much the week after I made the video, the author did a complete rewrite and changed how everything worked. And I'll be honest, I haven't looked at it since then. So what I'll commit to on the channel here is making an update to the TSD proxy video, probably in the summer, just so I don't make a video every month on the thing, because it's changing all the time. And I'll give you an update then. For right now, I don't know the answer. So hope that helps. Big Tree writes in, I'm using Tailscale at home with traffic to route my fully qualified domain name no matter where I am. Awesome. I'm trying to work out the best way to set up access controls to differentiate access between different family users.
Yes, so this is where our ACLs come in. You create, so each, and you saw a little bit of this earlier when Alex and I were ad hoc figuring something out. You can group the users into groups, which you can do in your ACL file. So each user has an identity when they log in. It might be your email address or whatever your GitHub name is on a GitHub-based login. And you can either group users into groups manually, or you can be very explicit in terms of like individual usernames that will be allowed to access certain things. You would tag all of the devices that you have on your Tailnet that are shared, for example, like it might be a Synology machine or a cloud computer or something like that. And then you generally just have to set up source and destination rules. I think there's a good explanation of this in our articles page, which I'm sure our trusty backend Tim will go and figure out. We'll go and grab the link for. But that's the kind of canonical way to do that, right? The real question that you have to ask yourself is, do you want to group them or do you want to use explicit names? For a personal telnet, explicit names is probably fine because you have a limited number of users that you're going to have. But as you get into the enterprise and organizational stuff that I'm doing, you probably want to use an identity provider and our skim support, which is pulling groups from your identity provider to scale that a little bit better. But it's really straightforward to do. Every tailnet by default has a permissive allow anything to allow anything rule because it would be a really poor user experience if you logged into Tailscale and nothing connected. So we insert that permissive rule to begin with, and you can then narrow it down very, very prescriptively via ACLs.
I would also add on to everything Lee just said by saying that every tailnet gets 100 devices and 3 users for free. So what we mean by that is that you get 3 seats effectively. So 3 different people can be part of the same tailnet grouping. And you can create, as you saw in my ACLs with Lee and SSH a few minutes ago, you can create granular rules for each user within the tailnet, and then the personal pro plan or personal plus adds more people. I think you get 6 seats with that one, and so the pricing tiers continue by adding more seats. We're also, I don't know if I'm allowed to talk about this one yet, but it's in the public docs, so I'm going to talk about it because it's publicly available. Just-in-time access. This one is for our enterprise customers. This is a new feature that's literally just hit the ground. So let's say you've got a piece of infrastructure that you only want to give someone access to for a specific time window. It could be production environments, it could be a specific server or whatever. Just-in-time access gives you the ability to open that portal, if you like to think of it that way, to that piece of infrastructure for just that time period. So that's one of the ways that we will help Tailscale pay for itself, is by putting some of the more enterprisey features on the enterprise plan. I mean, it makes sense, right? So yeah, lots of options there for you, and hopefully that answers your question. Anything else, Lee?
No, I think that's a good addition there. And yeah, definitely an exciting change to the product. We've seen lots of customers using it in the beta stage, and it's been really exciting.
All right, I'm going to drop a link to the just-in-time access stuff in the chat for you as well. I see Tim's been busy pasting a ton of links too, so there we go. All right, another question on the Zoom side, again from Malik. Thank you, Malik. As far as I know, the Tailscale backend supports adding WireGuard nodes as Tailscale exit nodes, but the Tailscale control server doesn't yet have support for this feature. Same question again. Is there any hope for it to be available in the future?
So there is a one of our engineers did a an interesting side project to support this, but it is no more than exploratory right now. You can like add existing WireGuard nodes, and I need to find the GitHub link. One of our very talented engineers added this functionality. It's certainly not something that's on the immediate roadmap. Again, we love to hear about why and the use cases for this before we start investigating why we would do this. Like, what's the value for you? What would be the benefits other than, installing Tailscale directly? We'd love to kind of like think about that from a value proposition.
I've got a bit of a question. I didn't actually really understand what Malik was asking here. Could you just explain it a little bit?
Yeah, so my understanding is what he's trying to do is add a standard WireGuard node, like a standard WireGuard implementation. So let's say you have again, like an OpenSense firewall or like a FreeBSD-based firewall, which has WireGuard built in and it supports like WireGuard keys. The idea here is that you would be able to add these devices' keys to your tailnet and use them as exit nodes without having to install Tailscale directly. Tailscale would just facilitate the key exchange. And this is really helpful for some like embedded devices and things that are really small and like or that have like already built-in WireGuard support. Um, so it is, yeah, and like third-party VPN providers, like, other privacy-based VPNs. It's not something that we are actively exploring right now, quite transparently. And there has been experimentation in this space, but it's not something we're actively exploring right now.
Well, I imagine there's a lot of complexity around the node discovery piece and, the routing tables that need to get pushed down to each client and that kind of stuff. Because if you're not aware, every Tailscale client on every device is running a full DNS server. It's got its own rule set pushed down from the control servers, and it's all stored locally. It's not querying remote every single time. And so if you have a vanilla WireGuard client, it's got to have some way of getting that information, I suppose. So yeah, it's an interesting challenge and a great question. Thank you for writing that in, Malik. Stephen Stanley, again on the Zoom side, wrote in, hey, so I just ran into a conversation on Reddit regarding Tailscale and the Kyocera product. Did I say that
Printer.
right?
Yeah, printers and scanners.
Ah,
Yeah.
okay. They use Tailscale for the copier and the pinpoint scan 3 something something to scan to a folder. For whatever reason, we couldn't connect them. And as someone who has over 100 clients and will probably get 800 more by the end of the year, what would be the workaround to get a pinpoint 3 scan to work, scan 3 to work remotely? There is pinpoint software installed on the copier, and then there's a client app, and yeah, looks a little bit convoluted.
So there's a two-pronged answer here. The first is that assuming the scanner and the like the pinpoint scan or like the scanner itself is behind a subnet router, I'd be very surprised if you can install Tailscale directly on the actual scanner itself because they're usually embedded devices and you don't have access to that. So you would probably need a subnet router inside the network where the scanner lives, and then you have Tailscale on the client. Assuming it uses the right connectivity protocols, it should work. What do I mean by the right connectivity protocols? Well, most of the time, when you do the default setup on these printers and scanners, they use like MDNS or like Bonjour related protocols, which are not kind of standard TCP and UDP traffic. They work at layer 2 rather than layer 3. And as a result, it might not be possible to use them with Tailscale. I don't have knowledge exactly of Pinpoint Scan 3, but what I do know is that we have a limitation on all the different protocols that you could push over Tailscale directly. And if it uses any sort of like MDNS or Bonjour based thing by default, it might not work. If it's a standard add this printer via its IP address functionality, and you have Tailscale on both sides, it should work. So the short version of a long question is we have a solutions engineering team. I lead that solutions engineering team. Please reach out to us, sales@tailscale.com, and we'd love to get a conversation going to try and get this working. And we can almost we could take a look at like what the options are here. There are limitations around printer protocols and all that kind of stuff. By the way, this is also why if you've ever tried to connect to a printer and it's not working and it's really frustrating, it's because there's all this like auto discovery kind of compute confusing complexity in here. A lot of more modern printers have kind of done away with this and just allow you to connect directly via the IP address and work over layer 3. So we'd have to do a little bit of investigation on pinpoint scan directly, but let us help you. If you want to reach out to sales@tailscale.com, we can get a conversation going and help you be successful here.
Yeah, great. I'm glad you could answer that one. I had no idea. So DJ Bazzy Wazzy wrote in,
Great name.
I recently bought a GL iNet travel router because of the Tailscale support, but the exit node function is not available and Tailscale is in beta forever. I wrote into GL iNet, that's cool, and they have unfortunately confirmed to me that they aren't going to develop Tailscale any further. Is this because of a Tailscale decision or is this a GL iNet decision?
It's a GLINet decision. So we provide packages for all operating systems that you could possibly think of, and then some you probably never heard of. And then it is up to the vendor to kind of decide which version of that package they include on their devices. I have a GLINet too. I don't use the exit no functionality, but I have a GLINet that I use when I am on the road in the hotels and all that kind of stuff. So I don't have to connect every single device to the hotel Wi-Fi. Um, I don't know offhand if you can SSH to the GLI net. I don't know if that's a functionality that they support. But if you can, then you can get to the operating system. My recommendation would be to install the officially supported packages and going through it that way. Um, but we don't control how a vendor makes a decision about including the packages. So we've had this with other vendors as well, where like the upstream packages is really outdated. They control their software delivery model. We provide the packages to them. It's up to them to deliver it with the hardware.
And the GLI net routers are just based on OpenWRT. So the main issue comes with uh, having a way to configure Tailscale from the UI. Like Lee was saying, you could just drop to the command line and SSH is supported again because it's just OpenWRT underneath. You can configure Tailscale to your heart's content with the CLI. I think what the question is referring to is, the user interface and perhaps any associated networking rules and access to devices like DevNet Ton, that kind of stuff. So watch this space. I should probably make a video about GLI net stuff because it's awesome. And I use it. Lee uses it. I know many Tailscalers that use it too. If you're not familiar, the GLI net routers are they're like the size of a fat pack of like playing cards or something, and they've got a couple of Ethernet ports on the back, and they provide Wi-Fi and all that kind of stuff. And I actually set one up on the plane for my daughter when we went back to England with a USB hard drive connected to it, and she was able to stream videos on her iPad from the Samba server that was running on the GLI net router as part of Infuse. So, lots of things you can do with it besides Tailscale 2. It's just a really handy little thing to get around, like device limits on cruise ships and hotel Wi-Fi's and that kind of stuff.
It
So
also
there you go.
works great on it also works great on airplane Wi-Fi, but you usually get a very strange look when you get this USB powered router out of your bag. So I've stopped doing it. It's not worth it. So
Well, the
yeah,
octopus of cables, you mean that
yeah,
doesn't raise
exactly.
alarm
Yeah. Or
bells?
like two antenna on an airplane. It usually doesn't let the person next to you is like, what is this dude doing?
Yeah.
Yeah. But it works great for like if you have like something like your phone is you because it can masquerade as the MAC address and the device header really well. Really great product. GLI Net, if you're watching this, update your Tailscale client. We love you, so update your Tailscale client.
Yes, please. All right. So Ezra Deniz writes in. This is a bit of a sort of a meta question rather than an actual question, I think, saying, "I wish every home had their own Tailscale network by default, and that I could share machines with them, and the same is true in reverse as well when they need assistance. Can you have a chat about considering an entry page for non-developers?"
I think this is really good feedback. So our CEO Avery wrote a very thought-provoking article back half of last year around his aspirations of the new internet, which is lots of small, private, interconnected networks. And I think that is kind of like what we're talking about here. This idea that, the days when I was a teenager and we would go do LAN parties in someone's house and go and, plug your PC in to play Counter-Strike or whatever. With Tailscale, you can feasibly do this with, over the internet. And I think that's the aspiration here. I do think it's very fair to say that our documentation is really catered towards technical users. And what we've generally found from the sales side as well is that we do really well with technical users who feel comfortable with the product. It is not lost on our product department that that is the case, and I would expect to see huge strides here in the next year, right? Like we definitely starting to look at what we can do to make this easier for non-technical users and kind of start to attack this space a little bit. But yeah, I think I hear the feedback loud and clear, and I think Alex is somebody who's doing educational videos on a weekly and daily basis. Like, what are your thoughts on? You probably have to do a lot of foundational stuff before you could talk about the technical side of it.
Yeah, it's a great point actually, and I think it speaks to a larger kind of so when you are doing networking stuff, typically you're trying to solve a problem, and I know I kind of personally on my own journey shoehorned my way into knowing anything about networks I remember on my 13th birthday, my village enabled broadband back in England. And I remember we got this little Netgear box, and someone said to me, right, or the instructions on the box said, type in 192.168.0.1. And I'm like, what? How is that possibly going to work? And then it did. I was like, huh? And it brought up the page of the router. So like I've been on this journey since I was 13, right? And it's not lost on me that that is a increasingly long period of time. There are lots of people who are on day one and they want to just, access, because this is the thing, like you've got some infrastructure running in your house, or at least I do. Like I've got a Home Assistant running, I've got a Plex server. Like I am deeply ingrained in this kind of like self-hosting ecosystem running services in my house. Many people aren't. And a lot of people that we want to reach are currently reliant on cloud services to do that legwork of that connectivity piece for you by bouncing all of your traffic through proxy servers ostensibly in the cloud hosted by Google or Bamboo Labs or whatever the thing is you're doing, with things in your house. And the journey that we've got to help people figure out is how do they install Tailscale on their phone and then know what step two is?
Mm,
Because if you've not got something running in your house or something running at a friend's house that you want to connect to, like Lee and I just did with SSH or an Unraid server or whatever it might be, like my focus is home lab. Perhaps you can tell from the things I picked there, but um, how do we ensure that people know what to do when they get to that? Right, I've installed it on my phone. I've done what my friend told me to do. It's that now what moment.
mm.
How do we get them past that? And it's a great point, and it's something that is front of mind for many of us here at Tailscale. So thank you for writing that in.
Yeah, I just will finish out by saying I think as certainly, Alex, our generation has been very lucky in the sense of like we have come along as the internet has grown and we've come
Yeah.
along as technology has evolve, but we're in a situation where a lot of the things that we understand how it works has become commoditized, right? Like it's abstracted away from you to such an extent that you just assume it's always going to work. And as a result, when you start to have to play with things like Tailscale, which use these kind of fundamental ideas of like layer three and layer two routing, how do you explain that to somebody who has never had to deal with it before? Commoditization, I think, is a really, really great thing. But how do we keep the knowledge that we have used to commoditize things? That's something that's always on my mind. And I'm onboarding and training solutions engineers, and I'm like, talking to customers, and you can never assume that the knowledge is there, and you have to bring people with you. So, very poignant question, and I think something that is top of mind for us at Tailscale.
Particularly as the AI revolution comes forth apace upon us.
Indeed.
So, so, okay, so question from Remmel, which I'm going to ignore because I think he's talking about something we shouldn't talk about on this channel. Songkwan Zhu writes in, I need to use other VPN software at the same time as Tailscale, such as Shadow Rocket. At present, the two can't run at the same time. Help.
I don't know anything about either of those things, so I hope you know something.
I don't know anything about Shadow Rocket either, so I'm going to
I
assume
don't even. Let's do what we're both going to do right now and Google it, shall we?
I assume it's a privacy VPN, yeah. Shadow Rocket's designed to capture all HTTP, TCP traffic from any application on a device and redirect it to a proxy server. So I was thinking this was going to be like a Molvad or something else, like a privacy VPN. I think it's a
No,
bit
this kind of
different.
looks like Squid or something like that, right? So it's more
Mm,
at the layer four, I think. This is an interesting product.
yeah.
But it's for iPhone and iPad. Interesting. I'm not even sure how this would work.
Well, so if it's iOS only, I think that answers the question for us, is that the APIs that we have to use as part of the sandboxing stuff to be on a mobile device, we only get certain things exposed to us by Apple, right? We can't just run amok. We don't get root access on an iPad or an iPhone. We can't just do what we want with the DevNet ton devices and whatever else is cooking under the hood on an iPad. We have to play by the Apple rules, and one of those rules is you can only have one VPN active at a time. That's just it.
I, yeah, I actually this goes across all Apple devices as well. So like if you want to automate installing Tailscale and Mac OS. You have to explicitly approve adding a new VPN device via like a user click. It can't be automated. You can't Apple script it. Like there's a whole bunch of things here. These are all really, really valuable security things, but it also means that it limits our capability of being able to do certain things. And this is one of them, I would imagine.
Indeed. Yes. Okay. So, Lorik Hillhorst writes in, also love SSH CI/CD for ACLs and setting up Tailscale in Cloud Init, Serve, and Funnel. I didn't read the second half. Alex's videos are awesome and keep giving me new ideas for my home lab. Okay. I'll chalk that one up and give myself a gold star. Thanks, Lorik. Okay, Ezra Deniz writes in, oh no, Exshuna. Is there a good projects home lab page anywhere on the Tailscale website? Yes, I think it's Tailscale/home lab, but let me just check that before I. Yes, no, it's not Tailscale/home lab. Tim, could you put a
Trusty
link in the
background,
description?
Tim, help
Could you
us.
put a link in the background for us, please? Producer
Um,
Tim.
I, I will say there's some exciting stuff.
I'll do that for
Hopefully,
you.
I'm not. Hopefully, I'm not. Oh, the producer has appeared. Is that what you know? When you're on a podcast and the producer talks, you're like, "Oh, a new person." That's what
Yeah.
we just got from Tim there. I will say there's some exciting stuff. And I'm not preempting the hard work of our product marketing team, but there is some exciting stuff coming very shortly around what we're calling Tailscale Contrib, which is like if you
Oh,
have
yeah.
exciting products or exciting things that are Tailscale adjacent that are from the community. We're going to collate them all into a single place, which will be very home lab adjacent. So there should be some exciting content here outside of what we at Tailscale as Tailscale employees are doing as well, because we recognize like this is bigger than what we can do as an organization, and you find all these amazing third-party packages and integrations and all that kind of stuff. So yeah, there's lots of really exciting stuff coming in this space as well.
Yeah. Okay. So a quick time check. We've got about 10 minutes left, and I want to try and get to as many questions as possible. So I'm going to go a bit quick fire on what's left. Is there any reason why my Linux machine on my local network can't find other devices on my local network when I start Tailscale with accept routes? Yes, I know the answer
Uh,
to this
y-
one. You create a cyclical loop by accident, and so when it's trying to resolve the upstream gateway, it doesn't know what to do. I will post a very quick snippet into the YouTube chat for you on how to add a manual route that fixes this. It puzzled me for months and months and months, and eventually figured it out. So I'll put that link in the chat for you. Dead easy fix, one line fix.
awesome.
Lorik Hillhorst writes in, is it possible to physically run Tailscale on embedded devices such as an ESP32 or similar? I'm currently running a Raspberry Pi with Tailscale remotely as a remote gateway for my offsite IoT devices, but I would much prefer it on each device.
If you can get an SSH or you can get operating system access to the device, yes, we have Go binaries that are built for every single CPU architecture. And if we don't have a Go binary that we use for that specific architecture, you can go build it. It's very easy to do. If you have an architecture that we're not building binaries for, please open a GitHub issue and we will add it. You would be shocked at how many different things you can run Tailscale on, but the answer is more than likely yes.
Yeah, so ESP Home, I know because there was an ESP32 mentioned in here, recently added WireGuard support, but for the reasons we mentioned a few minutes ago, WireGuard and Tailscale itself have slightly different requirements. So Tailscale itself won't run on an ESP32. Certainly as part of ESP Home, if you can get Tailscale working on an ESP32 natively, let me know and I will make a video about it because that would be stinking awesome and I would love to see that. So Perfume writes in, would you consider adding client-based port randomizations to ACLs? Global port randomization is good, but it's not if you want to lock it to one port on a node that's on a port restricted network.
I'm trying to understand the use case here. So yeah, I think I need more information to be able to fully answer that question. You have any thoughts, Alex?
Well, my thought would be, how do folks get in touch with you directly? I don't know if you want to give out your personal contact on here, but
SE, then
like,
we have a public facing email address, which is SE Solutions Engineer, but SE at tailscale.com, which will go to my entire team. So we don't have a single point of failure. So if you have questions around that, yeah, please feel free to email us as SE. We also have a wonderful support team who is extremely responsive and does a mountain of work that I can never understand. But yes, it should be easy to get in touch with us. So please feel free to add more information and we'll give you our best shot at helping.
What was that? se@tailscale.com.
SE@tailscale.com. Yes,
There
exactly.
you go. Right. You got to do the radio advert thing of hit the talking point 3 times. Se at
Exactly. Yeah.
tailscale.com.
SE@tailscale.com. Exactly. Yeah.
There we go. So I've just pasted, by the way, in the YouTube chat, fresh off the truck, the IP rule command that you'll need in order to put the subnet routing table and fix that up for you. So hopefully that works. Matt Landowski writes in, I'm trying to get Tailscale adopted at work. Where did that go? The chat, I'm reading it and it just jumped. There we go. I'm trying to get Tailscale adopted at work, and they're currently using Teleport. What's the best argument I can use for Tailscale over Teleport?
Many, but the first one is Teleport is no longer open source. So if you're using the open source version of Teleport, that is going to be um, removed very, very shortly. The other, and I'm British, and in our British culture, we don't badmouth competitors. So I'm not going to be explicit in, some of the functionality differences. But Teleport's job is to provide you access to specific SSH boxes and specific databases and specific Kubernetes clusters. So they have limitations on the number of protocols they can support. They also support a proxy-like model where something has to be available on the public network in order for it to proxy request through it. Tailscale is a network connectivity tool. And so, where you can only connect to SSH and databases and Kubernetes clusters with Teleport, you can connect to anything with Tailscale, anything at all. And we offer the same functionality around SSH recording. We have similar capabilities around audit logging and all that kind of stuff. We have had an uncountable number of users and organizations migrate to Tailscale from Teleport in light of their changes to their licensing model. So there's been a lot of organizations that have made that decision. We would love to, and again, I'm on the solutions engineering team. If you want to email us, se@tailscale.com or sales@tailscale.com, we'd love to have an exploratory conversation around what we can do to make your life better.
The only other difference I think that's worth mentioning is that Tailscale runs at the layer 3 OSI level, whereas I think Teleport's layer 7.
Yeah,
So level 3 is relatively technology agnostic, as in you don't need different support for connecting a database versus SSH. It's just TCP, really.
yeah.
Whereas level 7 is software level. So it's just operating at different levels, which means they can do different things. Okay. Jose writes in, so Lee plays CS. When is the Twitch stream?
Oh, I haven't played Counter-Strike for 20 years. Let's not get carried away here. Yeah, my reaction time has plummeted since I got into my late 30s. So yeah, I don't play Counter-Strike anymore. Once upon a time, I would have backed myself in most Counter-Strike games, but I don't think I could make that claim anymore. But we should definitely. I have been considering. I've been doing a lot of tooling and building different things recently. I think, I've been building some kind of things in the Go programming language to kind of get back into the feel of it. And I've been thinking about doing some sort of like live, like debugging or figuring stuff out stuff as I kind of remove myself from the day-to-day of solutions engineering in a management position. So yeah, I'm definitely interested in hearing what people would like to see on the Tailscale side, but you do not want to watch me play video games at this point. I don't think that's going to be good for anybody.
Well, you've been busy writing some tools over the holiday break, right?
Yeah, yeah, so a couple things. I wrote a command line tool that you can use since we added the client metrics, which you did a wonderful video about, we had a need for customers to be able to kind of visualize those client metrics. And one of the things that it felt like it was one of those draw the owl meme things, which is like stand up a Prometheus server, now you have the rest of the owl thing. And it's like a very labor intensive job standing up an entire monitoring infrastructure. So I wrote a small Go command line tool which will visualize the client metrics from the Tailscale client, which is really, I've just had Malik telling me I don't look in my late 30s. I'm going to stop what I'm saying and thank you for the compliment. Thank you so much, Malik. Email me, lee@tailscale.com. I'm going to send you a t-shirt. But to get
That's
back
all
on
you got to
track
do,
here,
is it? Just compliment you and say like,
compliments, absolutely, yeah.
there you go.
Yeah, so I wrote a little tool for that, and then I've been kind of working on. We are working pretty hard internally on how you can manage ACLs in less of a flat file way. So I worked on a little project that is like um, a way of managing the ACL in a lot more granular way using things like Terraform, which I think is really exciting. And I'm currently using this myself. I'm looking for people to beta test it if anybody would like to take it for a spin, which I'm calling Tackle. But yeah, I've been trying to familiarize myself with some of the problems that I feel because I hope that it's also a problem that other people are experiencing. So yeah, it's been fun getting back into some development stuff.
So Rachel wrote in saying, I joined this live stream late, but I would have loved some painfully basic overviews of Tailscale and some of its terminology. Things like newbie friendly info for what an exit node is, what a subnet router is, etc. All in one place. I have an answer for you. There is a playlist on the YouTube channel, which I'm going to link shortly once I finish talking, called Tailscale Explained. And each video is about 10 minutes, and you could probably watch the first few minutes of each video just to get the idea of what the thing is. And that will take you through some of the key concepts of Tailscale and specifics to do with those exact topics. So yeah, that's my entire remit here at Tailscale, is really developer relations and educational content and that kind of stuff. So I'm also going to post links to what Lee was talking about Tackle and his.
I just posted them in the chat, yeah. So they
I'm going
should
to
be
put
in there,
those in
yeah.
the YouTube chat for folks as well. Yeah, and I think we've probably got time
I
for
have an
maybe.
11 o'clock call, so we have to probably wrap it up a minute early so I can get ready for that.
Yeah,
This is my favorite thing to do at Tailscale, so I'm really excited about doing this again. It's once a month, right? Like we do it once a month.
we do the Ask Solutions Engineer, this format, once a month. I do a live stream every now and again as well. And, you can. Jose says Alex looks very young too. Well, there you go. So yeah, we do this stuff regularly. If you want to hear more from us, like Lee said, you can email us at tailscale.com. And I think that'll do us for today. Anything else you want to add
That's
before we get out of here?
No, looking forward to seeing you in person next week. We got our Tailscale offsite next
Oh
week,
yeah,
so we
that's
get
right.
to all hang out in person. And we're going into the early stages of the conference season. So if you're heading to any conferences that you want to participate and see us in person, please let us know in the YouTube comments afterwards about which conferences you're attending, because we're looking at attending a whole bunch of conferences this year.
I'm giving a talk at Scale in Pasadena in March. So if you're in the LA area, come say hi. And I think that'll
Uh,
do us for today. So thank you very much. I've been Alex.
I've been late.
Until next time. Thanks, folks.
Bye.
Goodbye.